Good morning on this amazing Saturday morning. I do hope that you are all fine. Thank you so much for joining us, and I do hope that you did enjoy our celebrations last night as we were celebrating Y254 turns 1. Once again, happy birthday Y254. Now, we have been having this discussion on family planning, and although early family planning activities were initiated during the colonial period in much of Africa, post-colonial implementation of the programs in the 1960s was a bit slow. And according to the United Nations Populations Fund, only five countries in the African continent, that is Benin, the Gambia, Ghana, and Kenya and Zimbabwe, had officially committed themselves to the initiation of family planning programs. Now, once again, we also looked at how difficult it has been for the African society to actually embrace and kind of try to understand this particular issue. But that's why we are here today. We are going to give you answers to the facts about family planning. And our topic today is Face the Family Planning Fact. Now, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, do share them with us on 22162. Start with the word circuit, and you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at eCircuit TV Show. And you can also reach me directly at Christine Kiai. So I would like to take this moment to just introduce our panel today. I'll start with Michael Mutua of APRHRC, and then we have Rebecca, and then we have Michael Ora. Thank you so much for coming and just sharing this with us. A while ago we focused on vasectomy as one of the family planning methods, but today we are just here to look generally at family planning methods and just get some facts straight. So at the beginning I talked about family planning being introduced into Africa, into Kenya, and it took quite some time to get here and for people to even embrace it. That was then. We are where we are now. So like, what is the data or the current situation about family planning in this particular age that we are in? Probably let me start with the lady. Rebecca, we could start with you. And yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess in terms of data, I'm probably not the best person to answer that question.
Right.
He is from APHRC. They do the research. I think that would be his question to respond to.
All right, thank you. Maybe I can attempt at taking that, given the fact that there is a lot of research that is going on, following and tracking the rates of family planning or contraceptive use in Kenya. And I must say that as a country, we are not very badly off in terms of the numbers. We are doing well, but not yet there. So if you look at comparing between the period 2003 and 2013-14, the rate of family or rate of contraception, or what we call the contraceptive prevalence rates, have gone up. And I think about 2 years ago, Kenya actually received an award. I think it's called the Excel Award, which was issued in Indonesia, which is awarded to countries that have achieved a lot in terms of increasing their contraceptive use. But again, we are at a point where we have to sustain those numbers. We cannot. We are not yet there where we can say we can settle at that. Right now, contraceptive prevalence is about 53%, and I think it shot up from 39 about 2008, 2009, which was really, really low. So I think there is a clear, there's a trend, and we do expect that in the next few years, if there can be sustained, effort towards increasing the interest and in family planning, encouraging more use and moving towards longer acting methods, it's possible that we can push that a little further. Yeah.
All right. And I mean, we're talking about we have come from far. We are getting there. We are not yet there. But maybe you could share with us some of the factors that we probably need, that have hindered, us, moving forward, and accepting family planning methods. What are some of the factors that hinder us and that we need to work on as a country? Maybe Michael, you can also answer that.
Sure. Thanks. And I think I agree with Michael that we are compared to the region and the neighborhood, Kenya seems to be making some significant strides in family planning. But to your question of what are some of the factors, I want to share a little bit of how we've ended up even here today. The question around the Form Nigani campaign that has been running for about the last 3 months. And Form Nigani essentially asks the basic question of young people. Form Nigani is a slang for what's the plan, what's the plot. You know, it's a Friday, it's a manenos, and it's so what. And the beauty about Form Nigani as a campaign is that we are, before you even get to family planning, the family part of family planning, it is trying to stir national conversations among young people about the value of planning for whatever it is in your life. Education, you know, when you want to get married or domesticated or domesticate someone, when you want to buy your first piece of land, when you want to go to college or do a master's. And we hope to demystify the issue around family planning by talking about planning just as a value. Part of the conversations that we've been having, bringing a lot of both influential people, musicians, artists, is to basically break that myth and say planning is an important thing. Family planning, particularly, what we have seen is a big issue around, one, the myths around family planning. So a good number of people assume family planning first is for people already married, or people who can't take care of themselves, which is a 50-50-ish kind of a conversation. There's also a lot of misinformation about family planning, whether it is, is it external, coming from other influences out, like you say, Africa as a continent, independence, post-independence, etc. So there's the question about information. There's also misinformation, which is essentially part of the campaign. What do people think family planning is and what it isn't? Who is it for and who is it not for? So I think for me, one of the factors, if we're going to continue the positive stride that Michael is pointing out, then we have to deal with the question of information, just so that we just empower people to make choices where they understand the consequences of those choices. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a negative risk conversation.
All right, so you've talked about some of those factors that people need to consider, and there's even the myths and misconceptions. So maybe you can share with us some of the myths and misconceptions that are so widely, shared among people, and so that people, of course, especially young people, can be informed at what particular, age or factors should you consider before, you take up family planning. And maybe even what are the dangers and even what are the advantages?
Okay. I mean, as a young person, I would like to say that maybe it's more of misinformation than really myths. But I mean, some of the things that stand out completely are the fact that young people consider that condoms are not contraceptives, when in real sense, I mean, they are contraceptives. So there's that. So, and then there's also the thing that maybe you're not at the age of using contraceptives, whether it's implants or whatever. And so the thing is, as young people, we're just not informed per se. And I think it will go like a step further, even if it's broken down to the nitty-gritties for young people to understand, and then be able to choose what contraceptive then works for them. Because ideally, as a young person, if you are sexually active, actually, when we say family planning, it's not really for someone who is married or intending to have a family. It's for someone who is sexually active and can conceive. So then it puts everyone who is having sex then as a person who can use family planning. So then why are we not having conversations with young people who are having sex? And unprotected sex at that, because then besides pregnancies, then there's other diseases that they can contract because they're having unprotected sex. And for me, I think that's the bigger part. It's information that needs to just trickle down to young people and then because again, I think in the rural areas and less educated young people, it's higher, the rates of unintended pregnancies and unsafe abortions. All of that. It's worse for lower income areas and young people who are not educated. So I think it's more to do with information really, and having that from all systems, whether it's from home, your folks partnering with the guys who are doing the research and the guys who are providing the services, because it's not something we can solve on as an entity, say maybe the government or the guys who are doing research or the service providers. It's more of a wholesome approach for the country, in my opinion. Yeah.
All right. So generally, we mentioned that the advantages of family planning is just to plan your life, basically. But then also there's also the disadvantages that a lot of people are concerned. I was talking to a lot of my friends and even people who watch the show and just trying to get some of the questions that they might be having, and you find that one of them is some of these family planning methods have serious health effects. But then again, if you don't even use family planning at the same time, then there are also consequences for that. So maybe what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think it's true. And most of the times when we're talking about myths and misconceptions, I think we also try to separate between health effects and sometimes they're experienced, sometimes they are reported, and especially among young people, it's very common. That someone somewhere used a certain method and it didn't work for them,
Yes.
and I heard about it and I'm not going to use that method because it didn't work for someone else. I think we really need to refocus our service delivery as a country in terms of improving the quality of those services and the existing services. When we talk about access to contraceptives for young people and adolescents and young women and young boys, I think we need to look at what is it that suits them, availing methods that work for them, getting that information. Because if you look at information, apparently the research that we have done show that the knowledge, actual knowledge of existence of family planning methods or contraceptive methods is almost universal, right? But the usage is still low. That tells you that there is the knowledge is up there, but the usage is low, which talks about that conversation of, converting that method, that knowledge into usage, into a behavior. And I think that's what we need to be addressing right now. When we are talking about service delivery, especially among the young people that my colleagues have talked about, how are these methods or how are these services delivered to the young people? Are the service providers well trained to deal with young people? Are they being judgmental in their service delivery? And I think those are some of the quality issues that have to be addressed. Of course, there are side effects to some, especially the hormonal methods of family planning. That one is a fact. But again, there is a wide range of methods that one can use. If one doesn't work for you, it can, and another one can work for you. And one of the most interesting fact that I wanted to bring up is that over the years we've seen a lot of desire and movement from less effective contraceptive methods to more effective contraceptive methods. Like lower reliance on methods like condoms, and increase reliance on things like implants, which are longer lasting and more effective. So it's true that there are still misconceptions. There are myths out there, but again, there are still things that we can deal with, especially the quality of care. Yeah.
All right. So we're talking about starting these conversations because the young people need people to talk about this. How then do we start this conversation? Because again, the Kenyan culture, the African culture is almost like a taboo to talk about sex. Well, we have grown, but we are still trying to get there. So then how do we start these conversations with young people?
I think there are multiple spaces, and as an advocacy person, campaigner, I always try to champion what I call having conversations in unusual spaces, especially in convenient conversations. The questions around family planning, sex, reproduction are things that people take generally to be quite personal, and you have to create a safe space for people to open up. And I think generally the campaigns, whether it's government, non-governmental agencies, etc., has confined most of the advocacy and outreach around formal spaces for engagement, which are great, but may not be the most effective. A good balance between that. Find young people where they exist and hang out. Find ways of disseminating information in the platforms that they exist in and feel comfortable in those, if you're talking about unemployed young people and there's a a bus stage where about 17 of them always hangs out for no apparent reason. 17 could be a huge number, but if you are obsessed with looking at the numbers of 100 people in a conference room and nice reports, etc., you might miss that opportunity.
Yes.
In church spaces, yes, I'm saying church and faith spaces, where there are already organized groups of young people who meet over after service every Sunday for drama or what. In other words, I'm saying we have to break down this conversation and the values of planning into consumable bits, so it's not such a formal, serious conversation about what you are doing, what you are not doing, what you are doing right, what you are not doing right. But I also want to say that, Christine, we need to remember that abstinence is also a form of family planning,
Yes.
the natural way. So we
Yeah.
don't want this conversation to look like we're saying,
go
go ye
ahead,
forth
yeah.
and
Yeah.
get into the gymnastics. No, we have to acknowledge that
Yeah.
probably is the most effective among the effective ones, abstinence, because if you're talking about family planning, there is a very clear biological process of how people get pregnant or
Yeah.
stuff. So abstinence is there, but we're saying that for those who are, for whatever reason, unable to or are already sexually active, like you said, there are also multiple options. You talked about advantage and disadvantages, and I think the quality of information is really, really important. Like you said, the myths goes, oh, my friend or my cousin or what used this, and then that becomes a story and a life of its own. So unless we are able to have conversations around, even medicine we take, you go to hospital, you're told there are contraindications, and those side effects could be because of just your own makeup as an individual, genetics, etc., and it is okay. But I think the most important thing, is young people, if we are to create spaces for these conversations, then we are also able to guide young people to seek medical advice on what suits them, so that it's not a one-size-fits-all, because that is how we start dealing with generating myths that then undermine the whole issue around planning. Finally, I think there are multiple advantages of planning in life, but I also think bringing human beings into this world, there has to be a level of responsibility and preparedness.
Yes.
And also we have to, I know there's a famous song in this country of Mungu analetanga mtoto na sahani yake. I think we missed an opportunity for a very interesting national conversation. Some people were bashing the song, some people, but I think there's a greater sense of responsibility, because you realize then somebody's life depends on you. And we owe it to them that can educate them, we can feed them, and we also owe ourselves a life, because if you have children that you cannot sustain and support, you struggle every single day. So planning is also about being realistic and say, I think given what I have, I can sustainably support 2 human beings without me forgetting about myself and my spouse. Because otherwise your life becomes, we've seen parents whose their life revolve around putting food on the table until they hit 60. And it's just so unfair as well. I want to have my life as my children have their lives as well. I just think it's fair for me.
So is access to information the bigger issue?
I think it is a big issue, partly I don't think it's necessarily because there is no information. So it's a bigger issue because I would say access to information, but also quality of the information.
Yes.
Because if you look at HIV, information about how to avoid being HIV infected. This country, we have almost, I would say, information constipation. I mean, people know but still, so it's a link between what you're saying, the information, knowing, and transforming the behavior so that people act in the way that is consistent with what they research, the information, etc. is saying. And behavior change is very personal, it's a socialization process, etc. That's why I'm saying, where we have this conversation, how we have them, not from, church telling it's ungodly. It's no longer enough for young people to be told you will burn in hell. They'll probably ask you where hell is located geographically. So we have to find new ways that are realistic and that are consumable to young people. And I always found it as an advocate, when you speak to people about their self-interest, and how decisions and choices affect them personally, you make greater strides as opposed to scaring and as opposed to, you will burn in hell, you will be a bad person, you will be. And we also are aware of the differential impact on women as the carriers of pregnancies when unprotected sex becomes something else. So there's differentials. It's women who show the evidence of unprotected sex because they carry that pregnancy for 9 months. If it is young girls in school, they are the people who drop out of school for one way or another. If it is college, it's you one who has to adjust your dreams and stuff. And that might have a huge impact on who you become, the limits of your success as a young woman, etc. And then, of course, the young men and not so young who run away from such kind of responsibility. Lazima washindwe pia.
Yeah. So we're talking about the church. And of course, the church plays a vital role, in our values as we grow up and who we even become. And at the beginning, the church wasn't exactly the biggest cheerleader of family planning methods. So how has the progress so far? And what more can the church do? Considering that, a lot of parents, you start from Sunday school and then because they believe that's where you get built as a person. Yeah. So Rebecca can answer.
I think just before I answer the question on the church, I wanted to say something on what he was mentioning about the girl being the one who carries the evidence. I mean, then that says a lot about engaging the boy child. I mean, a man can impregnate a different woman 365 days in a year. Like every
so
single
true,
day. Yeah, you see? Mass reproduction. Every day. But then the woman can, I guess, conceive twice maximum.
Yes.
It says a lot about where we are leaving the boy child, like what is being done for him.
We need to involve the boy child in this conversation even more. Yeah.
And then so to the question on the church, I think the church for me serves as an opportunity for information to be given out. Because see, the church, okay, so there's abstinence, there's be faithful, and then there's contraceptives. I can guarantee that the church stops at B.
Yes.
So by the time a young girl is pregnant, then if we are a church society and so we have failed at abstinence, we have failed at being faithful. So we are already at now deciding whether after child number 1 we will go into contraception. So I think the church, while it passes its values on how we should abstain, etc., it should still serve as an avenue for information, because information does not necessarily mean that we are given the information now we will go have sex. It does not necessarily mean that now that I know that there's condoms and there's the implant and the injectables, I can now go have sex. Because again, something I had during a panel we had with young people once was that a lot of young people go to church for various reasons.
Yes.
Among them hooking up.
Yes.
You find a girlfriend, you have a kakesha over there. So you believe so much in the church, but if the church is the one that told you, then abstain. Or then information there, because, and then also again, I feel like a parent would be more comfortable letting a pastor speak to their child about different contraceptive methods, not to say go and have sex now, but to just say this is the information that's out there, lest you do get in trouble. And so in terms of the church, I think the church holds a really special place in especially children, because I grew up in the church and I know that I would want for my youth pastor to be the one who had said A, B, C, D, and this is how you protect yourself. I'm not saying that go out and have sex, but this is the information that's there, because that's where parents take their kids, because you trust so much for your child to be taken care of in the church system. Because having them in the church and not having the information, they will still get infections, they will still get unplanned pregnancies.
Okay. I think Michael Mutua has something to say about this.
I just want to broaden it a little and look at religion generally, because I mean it doesn't just end at the church. There are other forms of religion. If you look at the statistics that we have, about 1 in 10 people who are not using contraception would cite religious beliefs and religious restrictions. This could be any of the religions that we have, including, you know, personal beliefs around religion, and those prevent them from using or adopting contraceptive methods. We have had a program in Western Kenya where we focused on, you know, including church leaders and empowering them, you know, like, and, you know, through trainings, you know, so that, you know, you make sure that when they talk about families, when they talk about, you know, in the church or out of the church, every time they are counseling, they bring in stronger and more you know, evidence-based information to their followers. Right. So there's still an avenue there. There is something that can still be done.